How do you explain Watauga College to someone who hasn't been there?
Every time I write a recommendation for a student, I have to think about it. And I say, oh, it's a residential, living, learning, co-ed, alternative, interdisciplinary program.
I tell you what, I'm an Appalachian man.
Somebody else from town said, you probably would like Watauga College, so on a whim I signed up, and I didn't realize it was a co-ed dorm, but once I was in there I thought, oh yeah, this is great.
It was a big amoeba of a community. It had room for everyone.
What I liked best about it was having my classmates living right next door to me and having the professors' offices right in the dorm.
You got to know everybody in the college. I think that's one thing that made it different than the other dorms.
And it's given Appalachian students a kind of people's university, to borrow Mao's term, an opportunity that you just can't find anywhere else except at the most elite, most expensive schools. Small classes with fully trained PhD faculty from some of the best universities in the world with first semester, second semester students.
So what we get are courses that range from what you'd call freshman level courses to graduate courses, really. But our freshmen and sophomores jump into these things, and because the teachers and the materials are so exciting, they manage to handle this kind of a workload.
Well, at first I thought, man, this is really hard. What did I get myself into, you know?
I think the academic reputation is very real. It's not a cakewalk to go through the curriculum in the Watauga College program.
It's hard, but it's worth it. You come out and it makes the rest of college classes easier, it seems.
A lot of writing, a lot more than I'd ever been used to. It's mostly just the large amounts of books for each class.
I would say they were harder in a different way, that they made you expand, they made you think.
And so the opportunity to learn a lot was there if you took advantage of it, as opposed to in the general college where basically you were focused in on classroom learning and by and large structured learning environment. So it was a very different environment.
People were in my office all the time. I never left before 9 o'clock in the evening, so it was a total involvement in a sense. People would walk into my office any time of the day and, you know, what am I going to do with this paper? What is this all about? And how am I going to solve this? And the next person would come in, talk about, you know, the boyfriend or some other such thing.
You will not get alienation. You will not get the opening wide of this great gulf between faculty and student, where faculty members train themselves not to know who students are, and students train themselves not to know who faculty are, forget their names 20 minutes after the class is over. It just can't happen here.
So maybe 2,600 or 2,700 students have come through this program, and they've had, each one of them, I think, a very different experience, and yet it's an experience that they can share when they meet each other. Yeah, we've been through that.
Warm and healthy for my family, 'cause I tell you what, oh yeah, I tell you what, yes ma'am, I tell you what, I'm an Appalachian man.
It's almost like those old Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland movies where they say, you know, let's put on a show. This is kind of let's put on an education.
Well, Watauga College began as one of many experimental and experiential schools that popped out of the turbulent college scene of the late 60s and especially the early 70s in response to student demand for more relevance in the classroom, less of a matter of stodgy old professors standing up in front of groups of 40 people and yakking off a script that nobody listened to anyway.
It began really with Don France, and he got together with Lorraine Force and Jim Steins, and they came up with the idea of a residential college.
They first had in mind a 4-year program, but there was such resistance from some departments and some faculty on campus that it seemed too radical to too many of them. So we weren't given a new major. We were given the opportunity to deliver the general education for a set of volunteer students who wanted an alternative way to get their general education courses. Even then, there was resistance within the sciences and mathematics departments, and they wouldn't let their courses be taught in this unique environment.
At first, we were somewhat the pariah and laughed at by many people who thought that what we were doing was watered down and was easy and was not rigorous as a university degree should require. But I think fairly soon, especially after a fairly large number of faculty from respected faculty from other departments participated 1 or 2 semesters and saw the quality of what was going on and the creativity.
The application, the thing I most remember about it was that it had a question on it you had to write an essay on. But if I remember right, it said something about a bow-legged beetle and a knock-kneed ant met on a blade of grass, ... And then you had to write an essay that started from there.
And I think early on there was a sense that this was something new, something exciting. It was a pioneering venture. And I think everybody was excited to be a part of it.
The early years were, I suppose, characterized by a certain amount of obligatory rebelliousness in manner.
It was brand new and nobody on campus knew anything about us. So there was a lot of speculation about us. People talked, you could find them on campus talking about you, and then if you sneaked up and listened, we heard that we had co-ed bathrooms, was one of the things people said about us, that we slept together, and it was a lot of fun to fuel those speculations. So we would make a point of helping people to misunderstand us.
And for a long time, we had this image that we were the party school, that the party program, we had more beer and more drugs than anybody else on campus.
I had some friends who were a couple years ahead of me who had come to Appalachian, and when they found out that I was going to be in Watauga, that, I mean, East Hall, ooh, the drug dorm, the hippie dorm. Once I got up here, it really wasn't even more than any of the other dorms. I mean, if nothing else, we always seemed to be a little calmer.
We partied very hard, and we dealt with big issues in a hard way. It was all commingled. We were asked to work with our minds and to stretch them and to think and to read and to do that with the discipline of any academic. And when we were through with that, or even interspersed with that, we relaxed, we laughed, we played.
One of the striking things, though, that first year was the sense of community that developed out of the Watauga College program. Very quickly, Watauga got to be an extended family for everybody who was in the program.
It was magic. It was, nobody knew what was going on, and so we all figured it out together, and it was a really, really positive thing.
In 1972, we began in Watauga Hall, which was on the corner of what is now the mall, and it was a wonderful building that was just large enough for the 110 or 20 students that we had, with some faculty offices and a couple of classrooms. But at the end of 1970, the 73-74 year, they decided to raise that dorm and make the mall a nice open space. So that's when we moved from Watauga Hall to East Hall.
By the late 70s, the students had taken on, I think, a certain extra measure of wildness. Those were the days when Bud was running around in a loincloth, if I recall, in UN times. I don't remember what I was doing. I think one time I dressed up as a kind of Fidel Castro type and pounded the table with a nickel-plated revolver in a UN meeting or something like that.
The UN was a crackpot idea that I had one day in response to a question by Peter, what are we going to do next? And I said, I have an idea before I actually had one, but as I talked myself into this notion of having meetings set in history that were based on the notion of a United Nations.
They took the entire freshman class of, say, 100, 110 students and divided them up into groups of 8 to 12, and those groups then studied different cultures beginning from a point in time. And the UN aspect of it is that we had to learn things well enough so that we could argue in a UN-type setting different proposals, say treaties that between the different cultures. What that was kind of the academic equivalent of overdosing on a euphoric drug. I mean, it was very, very, very intense.
I remember when we were doing the UN, and one of the big cultures was the Tassidae, which of course has turned into a wonderful joke in and of itself these days. But of course Bud dressed up as a Tassidae, and I had this sort of frightening image of Bud in a black jockstrap walking around serving us fried sweet potatoes. It was not a pretty sight.
You know, we confirmed all their suspicions when they saw us walking up to the student union in our fig leaves. I told everybody all they needed to know about Watauga right there.
It was, I thought, a very exciting, but it was a very demanding program, both for the students and for the faculty. And after 4 or 5 years, the faculty sort of burnt out.
But I think the strength of it was that you put all this energy in, but the problem was it wasn't sustainable. And it was just too much for them to, for everybody really to put up with on an extended period of time. You know, it was a short life, but while it was blooming, it was beautiful.
The Chautauqua program in Watauga College began in 1983, and it was a device to preserve the madness and craziness of the old UN weekends. Anything and everything happens in Chautauqua. There are debates, there are comedy hours, there's imitation of TV game shows, there are lectures.
There was things everywhere from teeth brushing as a talent at the talent show to getting in sleeping bags and wrestling like worms. But so I guess it is pretty crazy.
Several years ago, the university got all excited about Eastern Europe, and had all these scholars and all these people came in, and they offered a lot of prize money for departments and students who would do stuff and write essays. So we said, great, we'll turn the Spring Chautauqua into a little series about Eastern Europe. And we just inundated the students with material. They learned about Russia and all these, and the Baltics, and all manner of different places in Eastern Europe. And they just hated it. And we just kept beating on them, you know. They just hated it. They took all the prizes, they wrote these essays and so on, and they just got, now it's become kind of the moniker of their class, you know, that they were the class that survived the year of Eastern Europe.
One of my favorite classes was when this poet who was studying Rumi came in and he taught us how to whirl.
You know, like whirling dervish stuff?
And we spent like half an hour just whirling. And it was nothing you would ever do in any other class. But
it was magical. It was just fabulous. Now, Chautauqua is a course, a 1-hour credit course. So not only do you have to come to the thing, it's attendance required, but you have to do 6 on-campus cultural events. So the whole point is that the Watauga students will be the most present people in all the things that happen on campus, and it's quite magical.
One that I remember particularly was the Tokyo String Quartet, and they brought in 4 musicians from Tokyo who just played forever, and probably I wouldn't have gone to them if I wouldn't have had to go and write a paper on them.
there's a lot of stuff I wouldn't have done if it hadn't been for Chautauqua. Like a lot of the concerts, I wouldn't have gone to except for the fact that I would need credit for them. I ended up enjoying everything I did.
But Chautauqua is a remarkable way deepening community. You have to be there. It's very relaxed.
You know, we were always doing something with papers and everything. We didn't always get to see each other and just kind of relax and catch up and talk. And Chautauqua was kind of our place to do that.
There is an attempt each year to end Chautauqua with something very special. Historically, it's been in the fall, everyone goes to the performance art spectacular, which Jay Wentworth and Steve Ferguson run. Now, of course, that's one of the most outrageous things that's done at Watauga. We're talking about performance art pieces wherein a student, like her name was Jenny Olin, didn't like something that was in the show and felt it really needed more action, went out and bought like a pickup truck full of oranges, and there was a big chute as a part of it, and all these oranges at the right moment came down the chute while she and Mac James were hanging naked from some kid's swing set. I mean, performance art is very, very fantastic in Watauga. Watauga has always been about performance. We didn't name it that in the old days, but we knew that, I mean, you all knew that there was that element in it. Take something, learn it, and perform it.
Watauga has always championed the concept of a flexible and experimental curriculum. If you know the way universities operate, you have to go through 6 committees and 7 deans to get a course approved. But we've been given a sort of special license to do what we think is best on a continuously evolving way. So we keep emphasizing the goals of liberal education in the humanities and social sciences, but we keep adjusting and changing the methods of delivering that.
And it offers a place in the university where you can experiment, and if it doesn't work, you don't have a whole school involved, you have only that program involved, and if it does work, then you can spread it out to the rest of the institution. So it's like a testing ground, in a sense, of all sorts of different things that really need to be tested. And out of the program, you know, came women's studies.
I think that's one of the strengths of Watauga, is the possibility of putting programs together that are not just for the community of Watauga, but that they're kind of nurtured and given their beginnings, seeded, if you will, in Watauga, and then moved out to the rest of the university. And we could name some others besides women's studies.
Gradually, interdisciplinary courses began to be built up, and eventually those were approved by the Academic Policies and Procedures Committee, and it got entered into the regular curriculum.
We built a course on creativity, and that kind of course was taught by 3 of us, and then it worked in Watauga for a while, and then it moved out to the psych department and so on. And I really like that progression.
Lots of the faculty have worked on different pedagogical experiments over the years.
I'm doing a course in the Bible, and the Bible as entertainment.
I cheated a little bit back about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, by creating the New Yorker course. And it occurred to me that the New Yorker was a perfect interdisciplinary journal. It came out every week, and in those days the students could get a subscription for $5 for a semester. And we've kept it going ever since. The New Yorker magazine itself has changed, but this is a certain way that I keep the same course, but it's always a different course. And it's, so the result is that I don't have to do much design.
The vision of Earth Studies was to create a society, I guess in the largest sense, that would be ecologically sound, live in harmony with the environment. I guess one of our biggest projects was out at Valley Cruces. The mission school out there offered us the use of their place out there. They had a group living out there during the summer in one of the old houses, and we put some solar hot water heaters and solar heaters on that, and then we had an organic garden, which is, I always say is one of the most beautiful gardens I've ever seen. So we were trying to demonstrate and have students involved in all kinds of appropriate technologies and ways of living lightly on the earth.
The kinds of things that we do in Watauga are those things that we would like for them to be taken to the whole university. It's not that we are the only ones who do them, however. I want to reiterate that. We haven't done everything that's good on this campus. We've just done a lot of the things that are good on this campus.
As far as I know right now, we are unique in the state. There were residential college programs at Greensboro and at NC State. They didn't have tenured faculty in the programs. Other programs that began about when Watauga did, late 60s, early 70s, mostly faded out. And Watauga College survived.
It had enough momentum that it carried beyond the visionaries that started it, which was pretty exciting. And now is almost an institution, I'm sorry to say.
And it takes several things for a program like this to be successful. One of them is that the institution is behind it.
But Appalachian really appreciated what we were trying to do. And it was the chancellor and vice chancellor who recognized the value of Watauga College. So we had a strength that other programs at Greensboro and other colleges in the area just didn't have.
I was always struck by how exciting teaching and learning was for this group of professors. This wasn't a job, this was a passion.
I think in the early days, it was perhaps the serendipitous chemistry that was generated when that group of faculty got together. Jay and Leighton and Maggie and Bud, they really set the tone, and they had all the personalities of a family themselves.
Like, they're our moms and dads almost, and we're the kids.
If one teacher has one idea, the other one will be willing to expand on it, and they get along real well, seems like.
The stability of that faculty is absolutely remarkable. Maybe we've lost one or two. I can think of two. But for the most part, once they got there, they're stuck. And I don't mean they're stuck because they're not any place else to go. It's just that they got married. That's all there is to it.
I've enjoyed being here immensely. I've been totally happy.
It takes a lot of time and drains a lot of energy, but it's always been a focal point for our careers, I think.
It was the kind of period when you really feel like you're doing something important. When you know that what you're doing really is meaningful to yourself, to your colleagues, to your students. And I have not had many replications of that experience in my life.
And I think that, to me, that sense that we have the intellectual freedom and that education can remain exciting to us is at the heart of the program for me.
I enjoy it a lot. It's a terrible amount of work. It's completely unique. You never find this anywhere else.
Well, I'm very proud to have been a part of Watauga College. I love the idea of it. I love the practice. I love being in classes with these students. It's made my teaching career wide open, wonderfully creative. I wouldn't want to be anyplace else. The difference between Watauga students and other students isn't intellect, although we get some awfully bright students. It's their willingness to take risks. And to me, creativity is all about the willingness to take a risk. There's a lot more to it. There's aesthetics and so on, but it starts with that willingness.
Well, it's not for everybody. It's, it's definitely something that's takes a certain kind of person, I think. It takes a little bit of a freer mind, takes more open person, because we are a little bit weird. But I think that's what makes us so much fun.
And faculty tell me across campus, they can always tell the Watauga student because they're always the ones who are willing to participate in the class, who take responsibility for their own education, who make the course lively and interesting no matter where it is on campus. And I think that says a great deal for us from Watauga.
One thing that's going to happen is that after 23 years in the same building, we're going to be moving into a new building, and that's going to be terrific for the program, I think.
My sense is that the promise of the new building is going to come with an infusion of new energy. I think it's going to be a hard transition, but gosh, there have been so many hard transitions. You know, there were transitions every time a director left, every time a resident manager left. There have been upheavals every time the curriculum was changed, you know, and the building was redone and so forth. So I think it'll just continue with even greater vigor, I'm sure.
As I look back on the 25 years of Watauga, I'm just right next to being amazed that, first of all, it was possible for a group of faculty to sell this idea and to believe in it and work with it and push it for so long.
I'm amazed that we lasted 25 years in one way, because it was an anti-institutional move. And we have become more and more a part of the institution. I keep waiting for the Young Turks to come along and start something else fresh and better. And it hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure it will shortly.
I dig a terrace in the hillside. I plant my...
Do you do many television interviews?
I've never done it.
Never done a television interview. Oh,
So
something about it
the
all
living
being
learning.
housed together.
The living learning part.
Right.
Okay.
So we need the record. We want to have what people have to say at this juncture in our history.
I think the video ought to be just like Chautauqua.
I don't know why we're doing this, and I don't understand why I had to take my pants off for this interview, but I'll go ahead.
Oh yeah, I tell you what. Yes, ma'am, I tell you what. I'm an Appalachian man.
Watauga is intrinsically dramatic. We need a film of Watauga so that we can show what we do around here.
I tell you what. I'm an Appalachian man.